All right, we are just about ready to get started here, folks. A few more folks coming in at the last minute. We've got quite a crowd. We're excited. We've got a packed agenda and a long night. And we may have all 3 folks running for Council District 14 tonight. It's really exciting. So excited. We have Miss Viney joining us. She wasn't at our last meeting, so it'll be great to hear from her tonight. Councilman Blewett is at a fundraiser. He will be hopping on shortly here, hopefully. This is a busy time of year. All right, we're here at 5 after. I'm going to go ahead and kick this off. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Turtle Creek Neighborhood Association's Town Hall meeting to discuss Lincoln Katy Trail project, the Oak Lawn Plan, and hear from our current Councilman David Blewett and his challengers running for his seat, Paul Ridley and Elizabeth Viney. We have a packed program tonight, so settle in, grab your dinner, grab a drink, stay on mute, please. Feel free to share your emotions with the emoticons on the bottom. You can click the More button and paste your comments and questions in the chat box. I'm Amanda Popkin. I'm a community engagement, urban planning, and economic development specialist and a representative of the Turtle Creek Neighborhood Association this evening. I'll be kicking us off tonight and be your MC for the evening. Our agenda quickly is a detailed overview of the Lincoln Katy Trail proposed rezoning case, brief questions with Lincoln Properties representatives if there are any, and hopefully by 7:15 we'll begin our Q&A with our esteemed councilman and those running for his seat. We'll have some public comment open at around 8:15, wrapping up here by 8:30. So for a quick overview, why we called this town hall. Residents here must claim their power. Looking at the amount of property value here and the sheer number of residents, this should be a powerhouse of political influence. Unfortunately, the very plans that have made this neighborhood a beautiful dynamic success are at risk. The very reasons many of you have chosen to invest in this lovely walkable high energy area is because of the assurances that there are standards for development and plans for future evolution. The residents here must be the guardians of those plans and that vision. The last meeting we covered Reverchon Park, and now that that project is kicking off, a contractor has been selected to gain approval from the Parks Board and Council in the next few months. But we did get some feedback that it would be important for us to solely focus on this Lincoln Katy Trail project, especially with our councilmen and the council seat challengers. So this meeting's agenda will be part educational, part updates on Lincoln Katy Trail, part call to action, and part Q&A for those running to represent our neighborhood. This area is not known to have a high voter turnout, so we want to change that tonight. So send us your questions in the chat box. We're excited for a great conversation. Please note, I do have everyone's email addresses for tonight's attendees and the previous meeting, and I'll be following up by email with any calls to action or important information. I'll also be sharing your emails with the Reverchon Park neighborhood organizers to keep you in the loop on those upcoming meeting dates and opportunities to stay involved. Please also remember that emailing your council member and plan commissioner can have a huge impact in letting them know what specific outcomes you and your neighbors want to see in these zoning projects. Don't underestimate the influence you can have on these important topics tonight. Also, join the Oak Lawn Committee, just a small plug for them. Now I'd like to kick things off by introducing Anthony Page, who is the president of the Vine condominiums across the street, across Carlisle, from the Lincoln Katy Trail project, to give us a quick backstory and some information, quick overview on the project.
All right, thank you, Amanda. As Amanda said, my name is Tony Page. I'm the president of the Vine Condominium Owners Association. I represent the 63 homes that are located in the Vine Condominium project across the street from this site, the Turtle Creek, this proposed site of the Lincoln Katy Trail. This is a big project. It's one of the largest projects in terms of site area that's ever been proposed in Oak Lawn or Turtle Creek. It's a 3.8 acre site. The development history started back 6 years ago, believe it or not, 2015, when the owners of that site, and it's owned by several individual condominium owners, decided to put their property up for sale collectively and ran a competitive process with bids subject to, as I understand it, getting an upzoning to justify a high sales price. the first bidder that got the property under control was Lennar. Lennar proposed a high density site for this, a high density proposal for this area that was got a poor reception from the Oaklawn Committee, and so they withdrew, I think, in 2015. And then Lincoln Property Company got involved and has been working on the project ever since. I believe they have the property presently under a multi-year option. Lincoln came to the Oaklawn Committee with a proposal early in 2016, which the Oaklawn Committee declined to support. They came back late in 2016. Again, substantially the same proposal. The Oaklawn Committee again declined to support it. They came back again in February of 2018, January 2018, came back in February 2018, which point the Oaklawn Committee, by a one vote margin, proposed to support it, but there was that, as we understand, that support was contingent upon getting neighborhood support, and it also there were some misunderstandings about whether the parking was going to be buried or not. There were some subsequent changes to the plan made as they went through the planning process in 2018, and it came back to the Oaklawn Committee in November 2018, which point the Oaklawn Committee again for the third time declined to support the project, and then CPC also declined to support the project. They appealed to City Council. City Council also declined to support the project. That was in January 2019. And during that period, there were 7 homeowners associations, the Dallas Homeowners League, a senior living center representing over 1,000 residents that formally registered their opposition to this project, and there were over 700 official ballots from the 500-foot notice area cast in opposition. Project then went quiet for 2 years, and in I believe October of last year, essentially the same case was refiled again. And the proposal is to build a project with approximately 329 units, a multifamily project, which is and a maximum height above average grade of 70 feet, which at its maximum height near the Katy Trail would be 86 feet. We understand includes a significant above ground parking component, some requests to exceed the required public space requirements, to intrude on those, and to intrude setbacks into no setbacks along Bowen and Hall Street, and some setbacks along Carlisle, but exceeding the 36 feet height maximum, and so blowing through those setbacks, and so those are the most significant areas of concern. There was this went back to, yes, they filed the case in November, and then it went to they went through the staff process. We tried to engage the applicant in discussions. This time the last time when this was rejected by both CPC, Oaklawn Committee, and City Council, it was recommended that Lincoln go back and work with the neighborhood on a more acceptable proposal that perhaps is lower density, less height, and more neighborhood buffers, protecting trees, saving trees, et cetera. They, for whatever reason, chose not to do that, and worked with Commissioner Garcia and passed what was essentially the same proposal, the same development plan was rejected 2-3 years ago in February, and it's now going to go before City Council. The issues with respect to this project, the lack of transparency, the standard practice in Oaklawn is to, in PD 193 and a requirement of the Oaklawn Committee is to produce elevations and landscape plans is part of a community engagement process. They've chosen not to do that. We also requested a shadow study, which we believe have prepared but have refused to share, to show the impacts on that Turtle Creek riparian corridor and the surrounding neighborhood. It's been a lack of community engagement. The standard practice is to go not only to engage with the community and to get community support, but then to go to the Oaklawn Committee. They again chose not to do that, chose not to go to the Oaklawn Committee. There continues to be substantial neighborhood opposition. There were, again, 7 homeowners associations, a senior living center, and the Dallas Homeowners League that filed formal letters of objection to this case, very detailed, concerns about the density, the traffic impacts, the removal of trees, the environmental impact on the Turtle Creek area, lack of setbacks, et cetera. To our best of our knowledge, none of those letters of objection have been withdrawn. There are also concerns that some of the material facts in the staff report are incorrect. This is a complex project, and sometimes mistakes are made, but there are mistakes in the report that we believe have impacted the outcome. And there's been there appears to be a disconnect between what the applicant is planning to do and what's actually incorporated in the ordinance, which is the legal document that gets filed with, that gets approved by the city that authorizes the rezoning. And so we have questions about that. Then there are also more general concerns about potential violations of state law relating to spot zoning. So that's in brief, not so brief, but a summary of kind of the background of this. Thank you.
That was a really comprehensive overview. So for those of you who don't know a whole lot about this case, we're going to go into a little bit more detail. We've got some slides and images to show. You can also find out more information from the developer, Lincoln Properties, at their website, lincolnproperties.com/Lincoln Katy Trail, I believe it is. Google will have the exact address for you. There are some renderings on that site, and also an opportunity for you to submit questions under the form that says got questions. You can also submit any other feedback there. They are watching that closely and representing that feedback that they're getting from the community to our planning commissioners and council members. So please do give them all of your feedback. So here is a bit more information. We're just gonna run through some of these pretty pictures quickly for you guys. This will be more entertaining than looking at our faces. So quickly, we've got the basic rundown on what this project is. MF2 is what's zoned in this area, and that's a max height of 36 feet, max lot coverage of 60%, and minimum front yard and side yard setbacks at 15 and 10 feet. And that makes the maximum achievable density somewhere around 30 to 40 units per acre. Richard Brown is on the line here, and he's likely going to correct me on my facts here. But what they're requesting is Lincoln Katy Trail is requesting 70 foot in height and a minimum lot coverage of 70%. That is if they're also providing a few affordable housing units, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. The minimum front yard and side yard they're meeting, and they're proposing to build 315 units in this iteration. I think they went down slightly. So the zoning legal framework, what really tells the story here and is impactful are the PD 193 zoning standards in the Oaklawn Plan. Forward Dallas Comprehensive Plan is another tool that guides development in the city of Dallas, and also the comprehensive housing policy here, since we're talking about affordable housing. The Turtle Creek Master Plan, published in 2009, and the Comprehensive Environmental Action Plan, recently published last year, and also the Complete Streets Design Manual, also have important things, elements that play into this project as well. This is taken from the Turtle Creek Corridor Master Plan that indicates that Hall and Bowen should both be green corridors. All of the trees on this site will be scraped, save hopefully the tree at the very corner of Carlisle and Hall, which is older than the city of Dallas, but it's questionable whether the tree roots will survive burying the power lines on one side and burying the parking on the other side, and also extending the building above the existing tree line. So that tree is going to undergo a lot of trauma for a 150-year-old tree, and it's questionable whether any trees on the site will survive. These are the PD 193 purpose statements. which essentially lay out the things that each zoning project should be evaluated by. And you can Google PD 193, you can find the document. It is to be noted that this project perhaps meets 4 of these 11 stated intent statements. Also of major concern is the height violation, canyonization of nearby MF2 properties, and the lack of setbacks. We'll talk in more detail about that. Open space, green space requirements, since they're requesting more lot coverage, and also a lot of the big trees that define the character of this neighborhood will be disappearing. And also the building mass does not fit the character of surrounding neighborhood, creating scale and adjacency issues. We've got some massing studies that demonstrate how that is very different from what exists there now and what surrounds it. And also, this project does not safeguard and enhance the property values to protect public and private investment. That's straight from the statements, objective statements in PD 193. So this was the latest development plan submitted by the developer, and this was the previous plan. You can see this was the denied plan. This new plan has some areas shaded in to highlight the pool decks and recreation areas for residents, but the building outlines are essentially the exact same. And then you can see from the original site plan, there was simply a driveway cut through the middle of the building, and the fire lane was removed from the back of the property. But we've got some more details about what was changed exactly, and what exactly has, how this project's evolved over the last few years and where we're at. But this is essentially a picture that you're not going to see very often, because it's the entire block from Carlisle from Hall to Bowen. It's a massive, massive building at this scale. It's hard to even see people walking on the sidewalk. So just to give you a sense of how this is going to feel in the neighborhood. So in 2018, when working with Lincoln Katy Trail, Lincoln Properties developers, the changes that were made to the project included separating the building and adding this driveway that they're calling a paseo, and removing that fire lane from the Katy Trail, adding a 10-foot step back at 15 feet in height along Carlisle, enclosing the trash and loading. Some of these are really basic things that you would expect a developer to be doing in the first place. So it's surprising that you know, these were changes made to the project, but nonetheless, here we are. Also, the height was reduced from 79 feet to 70 feet, if including the mixed income housing, MIH, and also reduced unit count by 20 units from 329 to 309. I think we're up to 315 now. And that included 15 units of affordable at 80 to 100 of the area median family income. Also, there was a parking garage that is now partially wrapped with units. There are approximately 12 units on Carlisle and 2 units on Hall. They added bicycle parking and also 10 walk-up units on the Katy Trail where the fire lane was previously, and also a 5-foot change in articulation every 30 feet, and balconies suffice. So they added some balconies. So then as we continued working with the developer, well, let's just say the project is basically the same. As you can see from the 2021 renderings, this is essentially the same project that we were looking at here. There is a small indentation in this one building on the Carlisle side that's been added. But you can't find those renderings on their website. This is the closest thing that I've found to a rendering that really identifies that. Also, so after the project, as Tony pointed out, was denied by council in 2019, in those intervening 18 months, there had been no community outreach, no discussion, no attempt to change the project and make it better. The exact same project was resubmitted again in October in 2020. And we were told by the developer in January that there was no intention of changing that plan, that the only thing that changed was the folks that are our plan commissioners and our councilmen. So they were hoping to get a different vote. And since they submitted in October, the new 2021 changes in the project include an additional 14-foot notch bump out that you can see in this rendering here on the Carlisle side. They're calling it a pocket park. And also a 10-foot building notch, 85 feet wide on Hall Street, also being called a pocket park. So there is also 1 story lower at the 4 corners of the building that are facing the Katy Trail. I'm not sure why that was included. And the Paseo driveway in the middle between the 2 buildings here now specifies that it must include benches, green space, specialty lighting, all up to the point where you approach the garbage loading dock garage entry on this main driveway. And then the Katy Trail entrance on core property there. These are renderings from the developer's website. One last overview note to point out is the properties in red are these MF2 properties. The yellow is the Lincoln Katy Trail site. And these green properties all indicate properties that are zoned for higher density. I think it's really important for us in this neighborhood to just keep in mind that the Oaklawn plan, even though it was passed in the 80s, this was a plan for future development in this neighborhood for decades. And many of those plans have not been fully realized yet. And there is still more planned density for this neighborhood, especially in close proximity to this area. And so there are a lot of reasons why I can only surmise, because I was born in the 80s, that this this Oaklawn plan was created the way it was with an intention to keep this small pocket of low density amidst much higher density surrounding it, because it's next to the park. It's on 2 low density thoroughfares that connect our neighbors along Turtle Creek and those high rises 275. You know, there's a lot of planning and system wide networks consideration that goes into making these neighborhood plans. And I think it's really important that we remember that these plans were created for a reason. And we can talk more with our Councilman Blewett and also his challengers about whether they think the Oaklawn plan is still relevant, but in large part, there are still a lot of sites available for upzoning and density, and that is yet to come. So keeping that in mind, I'd like to pass things off to Richard Brown, who was a longtime employee at the City of Dallas, working as a staff member, evaluating proposed zoning projects and doing the evaluation for our plan commissioners as they evaluate the feasibility of upzoning requests.
Thank you,
Richard,
Amanda. Yes, you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Yes, I'm Richard Brown, and I have been assisting Tony and Amanda in this process. For some of you virtually, I'm sure we've crossed paths. I was the department's senior land use planner with 25 years service and retired in April of 2016. I love literally every second there. And I've been a land use planner for 36 years, and all but 7 years have been in the public sector. So I'd like to kind of talk about a phrase that I would love to have copyright. It's called the integrity of the public hearing process. And that's where Amanda and Tony and I have struggled to gain traction to help us help the Turtle Creek Neighborhood Association prepare for the public hearings, the commission hearing in February and the council hearing that's coming up in a couple of weeks. There are 4 parties. There's an applicant and the applicant's team, their representatives. There's the planning staff, and then there's the other staff members, transportation, the arborists, et cetera. obviously there's a community, because anytime you have a zoning case, you either have 50% of people upset, but you rarely have 100%. It's always some want something and some don't. And then the last piece, and I want to focus strictly on Oak Lawn, that's the Oak Lawn Committee. As many of you know, that was born out of the Oak Lawn Plan through the Oak Lawn Forum. Every zoning case goes before the Oak Lawn Committee for a recommendation, and then ultimately a letter is presented to staff that goes on to commission and council. We as a group, a community group, have tried to engage with the applicant and also with staff to help make sure we have the resources that help represent the voice of the community. And one of those things that we felt was lacking was that engagement with the applicant. Our first meaningful sit down virtual was 3 days before the commission hearing. And so when we shared ideas and suggestions, we were told it's a little bit late in the process. So that part was frustrating. The staff, I want to make sure you understand, does not force community outreach, does not force people to sit down, but it's highly encouraged. The other thing that we feel like is a resource is the staff has to present materials that are accurate. And this request, as Tony and Amanda have alluded, is really an MF3 request, but it was submitted as an MF2 subdistrict. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it is incumbent on the staff to say, this really isn't more like an MF3 and not an MF2, but keep in mind Amanda's comments about the Oak Lawn Plan that identified those areas to in a sense, respect the low intensity and development rights of MF2 areas, which this is surrounded by predominantly. So as a result, you end up with property owners being a little less informed they need to be. You have the engagement of that interaction. Without it, property rights to be able to stand up or write in and say, hey, we're in favor of something or we're not in favor of something. I go back to those four parties: the applicant, the staff, the community, the Oak Lawn Committee. And so as a result, you get to 2 public hearings, and that's the only time you have an opportunity to say, we're in favor or we're in opposition. However, if you address A, B, and C, then we as a community might consider that. So it's been a labor of love, but we feel like that the integrity of this public hearing process, especially with the pandemic, where normally you're face to face in the council chambers, but with the governor's actions last year on design standards and speaking, so went from 15 minutes to 3 minutes. But then if you were prepared, you were able to use more time. And here, your time is cut for everybody. And as a result, we struggled to get traction, to get the concerns of the neighborhood. And so as a result, we went about presenting concerns, suggestions, and we're hoping for more of an engaging process, and it did not seem to fall that way. I'm speaking to you as a staff person because that's who I am. I'm a staff person, and I feel like that the 4 parties involved could have done a better job. And the last thing I want to leave you is the quickness that this application went to commission. And so I went back to my 10 most recent plan development sub-district requests in PD 193. And those average 7.5 months from submittal of the application to the plan commission hearing. And normally a council hearing falls about a month after that. The Lincoln case was 4.5 months. I'm not saying that is a concern, but these cases involve so many people that I've mentioned that there's a lot of back and forth, and that's what gets you to that longer period of time. So maybe that helps you understand where our level of frustration was, because the back and forth and watching the back and forth and documents between the applicant and the staff kind of lacked some of that detail. Thank you for letting me take you down that path. We're all here to address any questions or comments later in the meeting.
Richard, we did get one quick question. Could you, as I bring up on the screen this MF2 comparison with MF3 spreadsheet of yours, can you just talk briefly about those
Yeah,
differences?
yes, and what you'll see as I start to talk, the first column, excuse me, the first unshaded column is MF2, and that's what the property zone today. MF3, you've heard me talk about, is really closer to what the applicant requested versus an MF2. And then the last column, the third column that's unshaded, is where the commission landed with their recommendation. And there are a couple things I want to point out to you. Number one, the increase in height is either 67% over the built environment across Hall and across Carlisle, or 94%, the latter being with the mixed income housing component. The other thing is the increase in lot coverage. It's minimal, but it's about 17%. But the biggest difference in MF3 and MF2 is the amount of units per acre. And let me put it in perspective. Typical MF2 properties develop at 28 to 32 units per acre, and this is a little over a 3-acre site. The current development, the existing housing stock, comes in about 31 units an acre. The applicant's request is anywhere from 265 to 280% increase. It's almost 83 dwelling units an acre. So from an average of 28 to 32 to up to 83. And as a planner, I will tell you that that does concern me. And as such, I think the staff report lacked that clarity between this is really an MF3 district. Here's why. There's nothing, again, as I mentioned earlier, wrong with asking for an amendment to an MF2 subdistrict, a new subdistrict for MF2 standards on property zone MF2. As a staff person, I don't think that tells the story, especially when you look at the Oak Lawn plan and how it says respect and maintain the MF2 zone properties, allow for the additional development rights elsewhere within PD 193. So I think I think there's a responsibility to put all the facts out, and in this case, I don't think, from my professional opinion, this is an MF2 request. It's more like an MF3, and bring back the development rights you're not going to use.
Thanks, Richard. That was really helpful. So kind of in summary, it's really based on the height and the number of units you can fit into that area. MF3 does allow, unlimited height, whereas MF2 is capped at 36 feet in height. And
right.
As we'll talk a little bit more, thank you, Richard, appreciate your insight on this. We'll talk a little bit more about the surrounding properties that are not MF2, and because they are adjacent to MF2, they're required to do specific setbacks. So we'll be talking more about this. Next, I'd like to pass things off to Anthony Page again, because he has a few more insights on some of the more detailed issues with the project as proposed.
All right, thank you, Amanda. You're going to pull up got our tech department going here. Pull up the slide here. And I promise we're about to get to the fun part, which is actually talking to the people that you want to talk to, who are the candidates for city council. And I want to mention that although Councilman Blewett is not here right now, this is a busy time of year for him, and he has been very engaged in this project. And to be clear where this is in the process, this was at City Plan Commission until it got passed through February 4th. So it's just now becoming before City Council. So he'll be, he's working on it, he's studying, he's engaged in it, and he's very aware of the development pressures that the Turtle Creek Corridor, Oak Lawn, and in Uptown are facing. So you shouldn't interpret the fact that he's not here right now as sign of his indifference. He's very engaged in this, but he's the incumbent, and so he's got a lot of demands on his time. This quickly is just the chart showing the outlined in red the various HOAs that have written detailed letters of opposition to this project. For those HOAs are within the 500-foot notice area, which is of special significance under zoning laws, as Richard can tell you. The 4 in gold those are Hillwood properties. Hillwood initially had deep reservations, and they have decided to remain neutral in this project, but they've written a letter that outlines their concerns about this, which they did a couple of years ago. But as it stands right now, as I mentioned before, 7 HOAs, Senior Living Center, and the Dallas Homeowners League, all in opposition. So next slide. Okay, this is the Hall Street frontage, and so this was under the Turtle Creek corridor master plan. This is supposed to be a green corridor, but instead, under this plan, you'd have a building coming with no setbacks right up, I think, within 15 feet of the property line of Hall Street. And if you look to the right, this is a big building, but again, the legal maximum currently allowed is 36 feet, which allows you to do 3 stories. But you can see here it's going to 6 stories, and at the ground level, it's hard to see because this is a big building. Well, here I'm going to look at the Bowen Street side. Here on the Bowen Street side, it's even more. It's 7 stories maximum, and it's actually, as I mentioned before, gets up to 86 feet above street level on that, close to where the entrance to the Katy Trail would be. And it's hard to see. It's obscured by trees in this thing. And this is part of the problem with the amount of disclosure. But you've got big retaining walls essentially at ground level, and so your experience as a pedestrian walking along here would not be great. And this is an example, probably hard for non-architects to follow, but if your takeaway here is you can see cars and people that are very close to what are essentially straight building walls going up. This is something that is expressly prohibited in PD 193. And it's one of the things that makes Oak Lawn special is that in residential areas, all buildings above 36 feet are supposed to have significant setbacks. This proposed building does not. And also, as you can see under the current maximum heights, this site is entirely surrounded by areas that are height restricted to 36 feet. Even the O2 areas immediately adjacent to the MF2 are limited to 36 feet in height to buffer the neighborhood. So those are the areas in orange, and then the area in green, of course, is the park area. Another concern with this project is because it's so big, it's a 3.8 acre site, and the way to construct this building is essentially is one long platform with 5 over 2 is essentially what you call it, 5 stories of stick-built construction over a 2-story podium that's kind of set into the side of a hill. They're tabletopping, the plan is to tabletop the entire side of this hill, which is adjacent to Turtle Creek, the Turtle Creek Riparian Corridor, Turtle Creek Park, the Katy Trail. And so that would basically, it gets rid of the existing grade, and it kind of disconnects this property from the topo. I want to pause briefly because I mentioned that I just finished mentioning, and Councilman Blewett probably won't believe that I just mentioned him, and he's very engaged. But as he's just shown up here on the call, and so what I'd like to do is pause briefly because we gave I think a brief introduction to the other 2 candidates. So we should introduce the incumbent briefly. Do you want to do that, Amanda?
Sure, Councilman Blewett, thank you so much for joining us. I know you've got a packed evening fundraising, and we're thankful that you can join us this evening. Are you connected up yet?
Oh, you might be seeing David Blue's name. My name is Zach Romero. I'm a member of his staff. He asked me to log on so I can see all of the concerns being listed if he wasn't able to make it quite on time. I just put a message in the chat saying that people can send letters of opposition or support to myself and him, and I'll ensure that he sees them. As Mr. Page indicated, he is very involved in this project. He's very aware of the community's concerns and in no way has shown abject support for this project as it stands right now. He's still absolutely in exploratory phase. So sorry about the misleading on the link. I think it just logged me in as him, but he is still hoping to show up shortly.
Well, thanks so much for being his representative, and do let us know if he's got a window of time to show up, and we'll just continue the conversation here.
All right. Thank you. Hang on a sec, I can't. Thank you, Amanda. Yeah, Zach, thanks for participating tonight. I do say I'm going to report to Councilor Blewett. I'm disappointed that you didn't do a better job like imitating his voice and impersonating him, which I think would have been kind of more fun and entertaining. But thanks for showing up. Appreciate it. And I know I spoke to Council Member Blewett over the weekend about this project, so I know he's, as you said, he's very engaged on it. So I'll continue with the presentation if my slide comes back up. And then I promise you we'll get to the fun parts in just a couple minutes. Okay, so as I mentioned before, and this is something a lot of people aren't aware of, and this is a situation with any zoning case, is when a project is presented, you see a lot of pretty pictures and all that sort of thing, but ultimately what gets approved by the City Planning Commission and City Council is an ordinance. It's a legal plan. It's basically it's a regulation, it's a zoning law that pertains to a specific piece of property. And what that typically does, it can do a variety of things. It can have design standards. Well, not so many anymore, Texas, due to changes in Texas state law, but essentially a box within which you can build the density and a maximum density. And so what we've done here is model out based upon our interpretation, our architect's interpretation of the ordinance that is before council for approval, the mass of the building that could be constructed if this were to be approved by City Council. And so this, that's what this shows. And so we're showing it from different angles.
They're making into shops and grocery store, and so you got boutiques and you got other things in there, work, live type of thing.
No, this would be a residential, entirely residential project. And so this project would be, substantially greater density and out of character with the scale adjacency of the area. And one of the issues with this project, why this is important tonight, is it's not just significant with respect to this project, but it's the value of land is only worth what you can build on it. And so in this case, with a MF2 land at 36 feet in height, that land trades for about $80 a foot. And a project like this, somebody could be willing to pay as much as a little over $200 a foot. So on this site, the difference between what the land's worth in its current state, current zoning, and what it would be worth with this upzoning is about $15 million. And so that's why it's of interest to, I think, it's just natural why Lincoln is very eager to pursue this zoning. In the past, the way things have typically worked in Oak Lawn is in return for these very valuable upzoning rights, the community gets a benefit. In this case, there doesn't appear to be any benefit being granted to the community. Here, this is an example of one of the areas of concern. This is the area at Bowen, and the Katy Trail portal entry shows a 2-story above ground garage facing the Katy Trail, big retaining walls, lack of street level engagement, street level activation along Bowen. And this is in kind of one of the most, a part of the city that this Dallas Parks Department is determined to be one of the 5 most important environmental assets, which is the Turtle Creek Park and Turtle Creek Corridor. And this is also the area in which the Turtle Creek Corridor Master Plan identifies as being a green corridor that's supposed to connect to the neighborhood. So it doesn't appear to be doing that. This shows how this would look from the Katy Trail. So you see there about roughly 12 feet of what appears to be blank wall, and it's unclear from the zoning ordinance whether they're required to enclose that or whether that could be an open public parking area with that's screened. And then, Amanda, if you can go back up to that prior slide just quickly, then yeah, again, there's the garage there, 2-story garage entrance there facing trail instead of facing Bowen, and which we think is undesirable. Then next slide. So this slide, this shows the mass from the Katy Trail frontage. You see it's an extremely large structure with no setbacks on either Hall Street or Bowen. And so that creates this real canyonization impact and shadows. And then the density of this project is contributing to a significant traffic problem. The staff report identified what appears to be a traffic problem to be created at the intersection of Hall and Carlisle, and they don't have the staff report, it was unclear how they were going to solve it. It didn't look like there was a solution that they'd identified. And so that creates a bigger problem for the neighborhood and residents that live around Turtle Creek Park and along Turtle Creek Boulevard, because Hall Street, is many of the people on this call know, is a primary neighborhood street in and out of the areas along Turtle Creek Boulevard, those neighborhoods. And according to the staff report, the traffic conditions were going to be unacceptable at the morning peak period. So, and they didn't have a clear solution to that. This was a prior landscape plan. We don't know what the current one is. We haven't been able to get one from the applicant, although they're required to file one before the project is approved before they get the certificate or a building permit. Most significant thing, according to this landscape plan, is they had to do a tree inventory. And what this report states is that there are 92 trees on the property currently. And best we can tell, all of these trees are going to be eliminated, with the exception of the one tree which they purport to save at the corner of Hall and Carlisle. But the area, the existing tree canopy extends well into what the building is that they're planning to build, and then the tree root would actually be cut off by the excavation to build those units around it. So it's unclear to us. In fact, arborists we've consulted with say that tree would not survive. And these trees are some of the oldest in Oaklawn, and this would be one of the biggest, kind of mass eliminations of trees, and including several old heritage trees that are 100, 150 plus years old. And that being right along the Turtle Creek riparian corridor, we're concerned about environmental impacts to Turtle Creek Park, the Turtle Creek itself, and just undesirable impacts on the neighborhood due to creation of a heat island. This is now triggering kind of a land rush. This is something that Paul Ridley, who's on this call tonight, predicted when he was on City Plan Commission. He said if this case were to be approved, that it would trigger, I think he said something like, would fall like dominoes all up and down the area, going from this project north to Javier between Central Expressway and Katy Trail. And in fact, we're already starting to see that happening. As this project started proceeding through the City Plan Commission process and was receiving favorable outcome, we now know that two sites to the north have been put up for sale. The owner of those sites had previously indicated a desire to work with the community and come up with a project that would be acceptable to community, with sensitive to scale, adjacency issues, traffic. But as he saw this, I think going through the process, changed his mind, decided to put the project up for sale at $300, and we understand he wants $300 a foot for it. At $300 a foot, the only way you can make those numbers work is to build a 240-foot tower or multiple 240-foot towers. So that's on a site going north of the Lincoln Katy Trail towards the Clare Ridge, and again, just along the Katy Trail between Gloria's and Howard Lang's. There's a two block site, and so that's That site is now on the market, being actively marketed as a potential upzoning site. There's another site, which is another old condominium complex. It's close to Latour, which is also zoned MF2. Those owners have also indicated desire to put their property up for sale, just as these owners are doing, to build and the idea is to get that upzoned for a tower. There are now, in addition, there's several other sites up north, just to the west of North Dallas High School along Cole, that have been assembled by a broker, and those are for sale at over $300 a foot. Again, MF2 land, and the only way you can make those numbers work economically is to build something that's 240 feet or more. We're hearing that there's substantial land broker activity, kind of scouring the areas throughout, between every site that's available, basically between Javier's now going south to this site, and looking for other similar older MF2 sites that can be upzoned. Part of the problem with this case, we talk about precedence, is the way the staff approval was drafted and the way this went through CPC, is the staff determined and didn't give a good explanation that all this MF2 land should have base zoning, should be entitled to 60 feet in height as an automatic right. Well, that would give you 5 stories instead of 3. And then if you add a few units of affordable housing, they would allow you to go to 70 feet in height. So the potential exists for 6-story buildings with substantial lot coverage and substantial, elimination of green space kind of throughout this area between the Katy Trail and Central Expressway. I think, with that, I mean, the precedents are potentially bad here, and that's why we're calling another meeting. That's why there's so much interest in this. With that, I think everybody's tired of hearing me speak. So, okay, it looks like Councilman Blewett is really on this time, as opposed to his imposter, Zach. Let's see if we can find him here. And we're getting ready.
My imposter, that doesn't sound very good. Man.
Well, yes, we had somebody that signed on that said Dave Blewett, and so I gave you a big buildup, and then we turned it over, and then Zach had to admit that he wasn't you, and then I chastised him for not stepping into the moment and doing, imitating you. That this could have been his moment to seize control of District 14.
I think Zach's okay. He can spell zoning. He's all right.
All right. Well, you're here at the perfect time to.
So I'm late. I sincerely apologize. I don't know what you all have done. I had a thing. I'm still kind of at my thing, so I'll break free for a little bit and then go back out and do my deal. But I'm happy to be here. And if you've already given Elizabeth time or Paul time, that's fine. And tell me what's happening and what I should do.
We were just running over our allotted time, about to get started on the Q&A. I just wanted to cover one more brief point about the affordable housing component of this project. With 315 units and a 20% set aside for special penthouse units, that leaves us with 252 units. And right now the developer has proposed to set aside 8% of those remaining units, which equals about 20 units at the 80 to 100 AMLI price point. So folks who are making down to 80% of the median family income in the area would be able to afford one of those 20 units set aside. There are now existing 115 units of naturally occurring, non-subsidized, affordable units at super affordable price points. And we'll essentially be experiencing a net loss of 90 units of affordable housing in this neighborhood. So I just wanted to underscore that. I know that was a big reason a lot of the council members supported this project the last time, but at a net loss of 90 units for our neighborhood, that doesn't seem to be the biggest reason we should be supporting this project. The project council hearing for this Lincoln Katy Trail project will be April 28th. Please do sign up to speak at the council meeting anytime between Thursday, April the 22nd, and Monday the 26th by 5 p.m. You've got a small window there that you can sign up to speak. You can also email Councilman Blewett. We'll be posting his and the folks who are running for D14 emails and contact info in the chat here shortly. And please just let them know your thoughts, your greatest concerns, your requested action. And I'll be sending out the development plan and PD write-up for you guys to all review on your own time, so you can see exactly what is included in that PD ordinance and development plan. And please submit any questions you've got in the chat here. We'll be transitioning now to our Q&A with our Councilman Blewett and challengers Paul Ridley and Elizabeth Viney. I've got a couple questions here, but briefly, I'd like you all to introduce yourselves. Councilman Blewett, would you please go first?
Well, Amanda, thank you very much. I know you and Tony are hosting this thing, so again, I apologize for being a little bit late, but yeah, my name is David Blewett. I am the District 14 City Councilman. I've been doing this job for about 2 years. Got to know a number of you guys over the past couple of years. Handled a few different zoning and upzoning and a bunch of different projects, so I'm sure we're all familiar with the process and what our roles are. So what can I tell you? I mean, is it an intro for why I'm running for office, or what do you want from me? Talk about this project? Give me a little more details what you want.
Well, I have plenty of time to talk about the project. If there's anything else you want to say about why you're running and what you've done while in office the last 2 years.
And how much time do I have? I'm running for re-election because the last 2 years has been very educational, very enlightening and rewarding, because I've been able to help a lot of people. It's been a challenging year. I've been able to help small businesses. I've been able to help people with zoning cases, with different quality of life things. Of course, I'm a big tax cutter. That's one of my big things. I talk about it quite a bit. The property taxes are out of control. I've voted a number of times to cut taxes. I've got another proposal coming forward. Public safety, you know, it's kind of a hot subject out there. People like to misinterpret things, and that's fine. It's politics. But the reality is, if anybody wants to talk about cutting police, let's just be fair. 2019, the budget was 501. 2020, I voted for 516. So the budget went up $15 million. That's an increase for those of you that can do math. Beyond that, I do cool things with cops because I think they're great. We got the horses up in Uptown the other day. Had a great show with the mounted unit. I was up with the helicopter on Sunday night to see how the street racers really interact with the officers on the street, and that was very enlightening. I was the first councilman to go up with the helicopter since at least 2015, and I couldn't believe it. I thought my guys went up all the time, but apparently they don't. So there's elements to this, the job, that are fun. It's challenging, it's exciting, it's a complex district. I very much want to do it 2 more years because, quite frankly, as some of you know, it's so complex. There's no handbook on how to do it. You got to get in, roll up your sleeves, figure it out. And I've done that. I've done it throughout the district on every issue you could imagine. And I look forward to doing it for 2 more years.
Thank you so much. Now I'd like to introduce Elizabeth Viney. I know she wasn't able to join us at the last meeting. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, yes, I hope everyone can hear me. I'm Elizabeth Viney. I'm also running for City Council, Dallas City Council, our district, District 14. And hey, I just want to make sure you all know, I wish I could have made the last one. It was a bit of misunderstanding there on timing and everything. And I am sad to have missed it. It's not for lack of wanting to be there. And also I am so happy to be here tonight. Thank you all for just, first of all, thank you for your time and digging into all of these issues. As I look at everything you have prepared, it just makes me so proud to live in a city with so many people that have so much vested interest in what's going on. I mean, I think those are the types of things that make our city great, right? So, so thank you all. Now, why am I running for office? I'm a wife, a mom of 3. I've lived, I'm an attorney by trade. Right now I'm full-time campaigning and momming. And I've lived in Dallas and in the district for 14 years. Came to Dallas to go to SMU for law school. After completing a federal clerkship, I then worked as a commercial litigator for a number of years. And in doing so, I began doing a lot of pro bono work throughout the city, especially in justice-related initiatives. And that taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about our city, about how to work with neighborhood association leaders throughout our city and partner with law enforcement as well to make our community safer. It taught me a lot about the importance of safety as an undergirding to all other programs that we have, as well as the importance of coming together to achieve change in our neighborhoods and change in our communities. And you all here are doing that as well in a little bit of a different way, but but it's the same idea that let's come together to make a change and make a difference. So I did that, and I poured lots of hours into doing so. I recruited other attorneys to do the same with me. For that work, I won Dallas Morning News and Dallas Foundation's Good Works Under 40 award in 2017. And yeah, since then, following the city, following my community, continuing to serve my community, I became interested in city politics, and especially as it relates to public safety and rising crime. And after the past few years and seeing the crime continue to go up, and current city council's mishandling of that situation when it came to budgetary decisions, which let's dig into more and talk about more. I would interpret it rather differently than Council Member Blewett has. So I decided to jump in and throw my hat in the ring and run for this seat. You know, I'm running to make our city safer. I'm running to support small businesses. I'm running to be responsive and engaged in all facets of our city with neighborhood associations such as this one. So I look forward to the opportunity of earning your vote and for our discussion tonight. So let's go.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you joining us tonight. It's so nice to meet you. Next, I'd like to introduce former Plan Commissioner Paul Ridley, who's very familiar with this district. Paul, please introduce yourself. I think we've got a bit of a technical difficulty. We can't hear you yet.
Better hurry up, Paul. Elizabeth and I are going to run this show.
There we go.
There we go. There you are.
Well, and I was doing so well. Well, I started out by thanking you, Amanda, for this event tonight. It's very important that the voters have an opportunity to see the candidates for office in District 14 and be able to compare the priorities that they have as voters with what the different candidates offer. Many of you no doubt know me for my 8 years of service on the City Plan Commission and 4 years before that on the Landmark Commission. I also am probably familiar from my attendance at Oaklawn Committee meetings for the last 9 years. I have a great deal of respect for the Oaklawn Committee and the intensity with which they review and dissect zoning requests in the area of the special purpose district. And as a result of that, I attended virtually all of your meetings for the last 9 years because they provided input that I thought was critical to be able to weigh the merits of zoning cases arising in PD 193. So the question is, why am I running at this point? Well, I have a very strong background in zoning and development. I have 2 master's degrees, one in architecture, one in urban planning, and I also have a law degree. And I practiced construction law during my career. And that gave me an excellent background for being able to weigh the difficult decisions and the complex issues that arise in the zoning cases coming out of PD 193. In addition, I'm running because I believe that our neighborhoods and our neighborhood parks are at risk. They're at risk from overdevelopment and commercialization in the case of parks, as we've seen with Reverchon Park. And our neighborhoods, for example, here in PD 193, in the very area that is the subject of this forum, Oaklawn and its character are at risk because of these kinds of zoning cases. So I believe that I can offer the expertise to appropriately address these kinds of cases within the guidelines and the context of the Oaklawn Plan, which I think is still a relevant document and should be followed in this instance. Now, I also have other priorities. For example, I am very environmentally conscious of the need to mitigate climate change. I have been endorsed by the Sierra Club the only one of the three candidates who has been so endorsed. And I feel strongly that the Climate Action Plan, CCAP, adopted last year should be implemented in its 97 recommendations. And so finally, I feel strongly that city government should be open, transparent, and responsive to the constituents. And that means no backroom deals, openness to all opinions. Anyone who wants to offer them, I will have an open door. And I believe that the more cooks, the better the soup, so that we can get the best decisions made for Oak Lawn, all of District 14, and the city.
Thank you, Mr. Ridley. I'll kick the questions off here. And if you guys in the audience have questions, feel free to add them to the chat. We're going to try to keep this focused on zoning and the Lincoln Katy Trail plan, but I know you guys have a lot of other questions. We may need to schedule more meetings. What is the importance of the Oak Lawn plan to you? And do you believe the Oak Lawn plan is still a relevant guide to guiding development in the Oak Lawn community, or has it outlived its usefulness? I'll go in the same order for these questions and then we'll mix things up. Councilman Blewett?
Yeah, well, the Oak Lawn Committee isn't a neighborhood association, but it's critically important to the future of Oak Lawn. And I've looked at it from the first meeting that I went to until today as a partner. Now, there's a process to zoning, there's a process to things you guys work on. And quite frankly, when a deal comes to you, and I expect that deals will come to you, I do not like when they don't. And two of them have not, one in my district and one in District 2. I think Mr. Ridley brought up before, but we'll just kind of move past that. I think that I don't like precedents being broken. I do think the Oak Lawn Committee historically has played a valuable role in tightening up deals before it got to city staff. I expect that to go forward. I want that to go forward. There have been elements of the Oak Lawn Committee, quite frankly, that have not worked as well as it should. I think you've had new members, you've had people ebb and flow in terms of joining, you've had developers that have joined that have changed the flavor. You have a new iteration of leadership. I think it's the third one maybe in the last couple, you could tell me exactly when leadership changed over, but there is a new spirit or new culture on the Oak Lawn Committee that even though I've only been around a few years, I can see it. And I do think that we're gonna have to figure out what the future of the Oak Lawn Committee is, because there are a lot of developers coming around, guys. I mean, we talked about this, 160 odd sub-districts, developers are coming all the time. $1 billion were done last year, and largely almost all of it came through you. So it's gonna keep coming. The dirt's getting more expensive. Mr. Page has talked about that. It's going to keep getting expensive if you can upzone and actually figure out how to make the money work. So it's coming. I need you guys. I expect you to be there, but you have to be a partner so that when a deal gets to city staff, which has its own set of challenges and how they work on it, it's tightened up, because I can't have it coming to me where it's not buttoned up. And I get a number of things that have come to me that aren't done. And it's not just the Oak Lawn Committee. It's not just city staff. It's CPC also. So the process is under risk. It is under challenge, especially because of the demand. You guys are going to have to, it's work for all of us, but I need you. I expect you to be there, and I'll be helpful and supportive.
Thank you, Ms. Lively. I'll
Hi.
just go ahead and repeat the question. Yeah. Do you believe the Oak Lawn plan is still a relevant document guiding the community? And what's the importance of the Oak Lawn plan?
Yeah, you know, as has been talked about a lot this evening, the Oak Lawn plan, I mean, it has a lot of history. It's been there for a while. And I think that history and that collaboration, that seeking to involve, as was discussed earlier, multiple facets, multiple people in the community, between developers to residents to the committee. I think those types of things is what makes development good and appropriate in the Oak Lawn area. It's where people are flocking to. We've seen that, especially in the past few years. People are moving into Dallas at high rates, and they want to live in the Oak Lawn area. I think a lot of that is because of the Oak Lawn plan and because of the role that the Oak Lawn Committee has played to seek to preserve the beauty that is there. Development is continuing to come, but we need to be cautious. We need to be cautious that we are not harming the thing that is bringing people into our city, and that is making the Oak Lawn area the pulse of Dallas. I mean, it is truly the vibrant epicenter of our city. And And it is that way because of the collaboration, because of how it's been and the bit of give and take. So so yes, development is continuing to come, but I believe people in your role need to continue to exercise your voice. The more voices that we exercise and we heed, I think the better it will be. So as far as the future of the Oaklawn plan, yeah, I mean, I think you all need to continue exercising your voice and need to continue coming to the table, and people in leadership need to continue to making that a welcoming environment for which you can come, and that your voices will be heeded.
Thank you so much. Mr. Paul Ridley.
Thank you, Amanda. I am firmly committed to the Oaklawn plan and to the Oaklawn committee, as I said in my opening remarks. And that is because the Oaklawn plan is not just a document, it's a consensus represented by all of the stakeholders in Oaklawn who prepared that document after countless meetings and give and take and compromise. It is therefore a document that has a life, and it has continued to have a life and relevance because the Oaklawn community supports it. And that's critical here. The same is true of the Oaklawn Committee, which I have referred to previously as the guardian of the Oaklawn plan. And it's so critical because we're faced with unprecedented development pressure in Oaklawn today. If it hadn't been for the Oaklawn plan and its guardian, Oaklawn would not be the same as it is today. There would be no MF2 zoning left. It would be canyonized, and it would be a totally different environment and character. Now, Mr. Blewett says that he respects the Oaklawn plan and the Oaklawn committee, but I think he's just giving that lip service because his actions tell a different story. And that is that he is now going to consider at the city council a development proposal and rezoning that has not been reviewed by the Oaklawn committee, as Mr. Page has observed, and which his plan commissioner broke precedent of over 20 years duration in approving this rezoning at the plan commission without it first being reviewed by the Oaklawn committee. And the other precedent that was broken was that the Oaklawn committee did not support it. And he was the first plan commissioner in that 20-year span, at least, who passed a rezoning without the support of the Oaklawn committee. I didn't do that in 8 years on the plan commission, and I won't do that in the future because I am committed, and I've shown that I'm committed by my actions to both the Oaklawn plan and the Oaklawn committee.
Wow, you bring some historical perspective to things. So continuing in that vein, I'm curious what you guys think would be the appropriate time to rework the Oaklawn plan. I feel like there's some conversation, especially among some of the current plan commissioners who don't live in this district, that the Oaklawn plan is maybe out of date. It's, 30 some odd years old. And at what point is this a plan that's ready to be revisited? I'm curious what y'all's thoughts are on that. Paul Ridley, why don't you go first on this one?
Sure, Amanda. The Oaklawn plan, it will be ready for revision when the Oaklawn community feels that it's ready. I'm a strong believer in neighborhood self-determination. I don't think someone at City Hall should tell the Oaklawn committee that their plan is outdated and they should redo it. I think that's a decision that is totally up to the Oaklawn population. And I have shown that in my actions on the Plan Commission of supporting the decisions, whether they were for or against a project that came out of the Oaklawn Special Purpose District. And I think that's critical in a modern day, that we not have a paternalistic city government, but one that's driven by neighborhood wishes. And that principle, I think, applies very well to the Oaklawn plan. If there is support amongst the stakeholders in Oaklawn to amend or revise or change the scope of the Oaklawn plan, I'm fine with that. But I have not seen that in any significant degree.
Elizabeth Viney, what do you think? What would tell you that it's time to revisit the Oaklawn plan and rework it?
Yeah, I mean, I think what would tell me is beginning discussions with all vested interests and all vested parties. I mean, that's what I would look to do, to have discussion and see what the community is feeling. And now, I understand that there is this tension that has been spoken about between, what are the interests of the city as a whole and Oaklawn in particular as a neighborhood. Well, I do think both need to be taken in perspective. However, those in closest proximity to what is going on, I believe, have an outsized voice, right? So, I would be, I would want to begin the conversation, and should there be support from the local community who do have an outsized voice in this sphere, then yeah, I think we move forward with it. But if not, then let's talk and let's have those discussions.
Thank you. Councilman Blewett, what would indicate to you that it's time to update the plan?
Yeah, my opinion is that if we opened it up, it would cause all kinds of problems that'd be worse. If we were going to tighten up certain aspects of it, that's fine. But I'm not supportive of opening up and trying to redo it.
All right, so my next question relates specifically to the Lincoln Katy Trail project. Do you think that it is consistent with the Oaklawn plan, or do we leave low density pockets in the midst of higher density? What's your take on this Lincoln Katy Trail project? Is it consistent with the Oaklawn plan? Elizabeth Viney, can we start with you this time?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think the answer to that is, as you all have adequately laid out, it does seem to be inconsistent with the Oaklawn plan. It seems as though there has been some precedent for certain exceptions to have taken place, but when exceptions do take place, it seems like there's some give and take. What is the community benefit? And it does not seem that there was early and often buy-in from the local community in discussing those types of issues with this project in particular. So yeah, it does seem out of step. It seems like there's a lot of information there to comb through, but I think you all have put out the case adequately that even looking at looking at all the aspects, height, density, shadow studies, canyoning, traffic studies, et cetera, it seems as though that the traffic studies, there hasn't been at least given to us a complete report about how that would affect the area. So it seems to have a lot of hair on the deal, right? As some would say in the finance world. And so yeah, I mean, it does seem to be out of step.
Thank you. Councilman Blewett, do you believe the Lincoln Katy Trail project is inconsistent with the Oaklawn plan, or is it all right to have some lower density pockets nestled among the higher density?
Well, I once had a conversation with the former plan commissioner, Paul Ridley, where he discussed that he did not discuss his votes before a vote. And I actually think on that point, he was right. So I disagree with him on a lot of things, but I agree with that. In reference to this deal, so I'm not going to tell you specifics about what I think about it, other than it has gone through a process. 160 plus sub-districts exist within the Oaklawn plan area, 193. So there is a history there of spots being upzoned, including a number of them that Mr. Ridley has voted for. So you can't say that it hasn't been done. I think Mr. Ridley might have passed 6 of them, 7 of them. And his only argument is it didn't go, he didn't do anything that didn't go through the Oaklawn committee. Well, that's fine. But I mean, that's kind of shaving it in a weak kind of way. The real answer is there are exceptions to the plan. There have been, and there continues to be. So what do I think about this deal? There are problems with it. You can look just a little bit to the south and you can see projects that are similar to it. You can look to the Katy up on the Katy Trail up north that's bigger than this, that Ridley passed, he voted for enthusiastically. So these things are happening. My guess is they're going to continue to happen. Specific this deal, some people on this call know that I have tried, now that it's at the council level, I have tried to see if I can get some movement on setbacks, maybe the paseo. There's a couple of things I'm thinking that would make this deal more acceptable. And I haven't gotten conclusion on that yet, but getting further out there than that, look, guys, you all know this. I mean, that project has been around for a lot of years. There's a lot of other projects that are out there that are bigger, maybe not in this particular area. So I'm not satisfied with it, but I'm also not unsatisfied. So I'll just be candid that I know what y'all would like for me to say. I know what the intent is, but this case is coming to me. It's at my level. I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to do until I get closer. And I'm trying to make it better at this stage of the game.
Thank you. Mr. Paul Ridley, do you believe that the Lincoln Katy Trail project is consistent with the Oaklawn plan? Should we leave low density pockets in the midst of higher density? What's your take?
No, I do not believe that it's consistent for the multitude of reasons that Tony Page so eloquently voiced in his presentation. Issues with setbacks, with height, with scraping the 97 trees, the mature trees that are on the site currently that lead to the environment of the whole Oaklawn area. It also does not comply with the density. It would triple the number of units on this same site. It would remove 100 affordable units from the inventory of affordable housing in Oaklawn, and it would destabilize prices of land and existing MF2 zoning. You saw the map that Tony showed early in his presentation. The green areas indicated high density zoning that were underutilized. Those areas could very easily be developed with existing zoning to the density that the developers want and still comply with the Oaklawn plan. But that's not economic for them. They don't want to pay for high-priced, highly zoned land. They would rather take advantage of the low prices for the MF2 zoning, get the up zoning at the city, and then they get a bonus in terms of a huge windfall when they build to MF3 standards. Now, in response to Mr. Blewett and his reference to upzonings that I approved when I served on the Plan Commission, each and every one of those was done with the full support of the Oaklawn Committee. I never once approved a project that didn't have that support of the Oaklawn Committee. And when the guardians of the Oaklawn plan supported it, I thought that would by itself make it consistent with the Oaklawn plan. None of those had the disruptive features of this proposed plan, which is why I voted against it and saw both the Plan Commission and the City Council denied this same request in 2018 and 2019. My position on it remains the same. I am still opposed to it.
Can I ask Mr. Ridley a question?
Why not?
Paul, my understanding is you voted for it one time and then you turned around on the next CPC meeting and voted against it. Is that true? Did you vote for it and then against it?
No, that is not true. I voted against it. One of my fellow plan commissioners who also voted against it decided he wanted to bring it back. And so he filed a motion for reconsideration, which he was entitled to do. And that was turned down unanimously at the following Plan Commission meeting on the grounds that we don't revisit zoning decisions just because the developer wants a second bite at the apple. The only basis for reconsideration is if the law has changed or if the facts have changed. Neither changed in this instance. I voted the same way both times.
Okay, thanks.
So my next question is, should there be an exception to the Oaklawn plan despite neighborhood opposition or despite the Oaklawn Committee's opposition to it, do those weigh heavily on a decision to approve an exception to the plan? Paul Ridley.
Sorry, could you repeat the question, Amanda?
Yeah. Where was I going with? Should there be an exception to the Oak Lawn plan, a project that is an exception to the plan approved despite neighborhood opposition and despite the Oak Lawn committee's refusal to support the project? Is that an appropriate exception to the plan?
Absolutely not. That's not an exception to the plan. That's a violation of the plan, an unauthorized one.
Simply put. Elizabeth Viney, would you like to address the question? Do you believe that an exception should be made to the plan despite neighborhood opposition, and if the Oak Lawn committee is also not in support of a project?
Yeah, no, I mean, it seems like that would go against what I would be trying to do here, which is bringing in neighborhood discussion and bringing in the Oak Lawn committee early and often in consultation with developers and with the city plan commissioner. So it seems like that is not the position, or that is not a situation that I would want to see a development in. And it violates longstanding precedent. And, you know, as an attorney, when something violates precedent, it's cause for concern. So I would say it's inappropriate because it violates how things have been going and working well for this area. And by working well, I mean it's kept the area a place where people want to move to live, work, and play. So yeah, I think because it violates longstanding precedent, it's probably inappropriate.
Thank you. And Councilman Blewett, should there be an exception made to the plan despite neighborhood opposition and opposition by the Oak Lawn committee?
Yeah, I've got a couple of different answers, so I'm kind of processing which one I want to give, because there's things that I'd like to talk in private with the leadership of the Oak Lawn committee in terms of where we are and what we're doing. There are elements of the Oak Lawn committee that I'd like to see changed. I'd like to see more in the I know it's not part of your charter, but beautification and certain elements that I think are more, I wish you guys are more than just zoning, right? So, I mean, there are elements to what you guys do that are interesting to me, and it's not really appropriate. Exceptions, we've done exceptions, tons of them. So, your question about should we or not, I hesitate to say this, but I'll also say, with the exception, maybe even at council, there's a process to zoning cases, and nothing is veto proof. And maybe I shouldn't say that, but quite frankly, my predecessor was overruled in his own district on council. CPC commissioners are overruled. City staff is overruled. So quite frankly, if you want to be honest about the process, yes, there should be exceptions. And that's why it's important that you guys work as a partnership and work together, because the fewer exceptions, the better. It weakens the plan if there are exceptions. There have been too many. So there's a process to this. But if you're looking for me to give you an absolute answer, I mean, Mr. Ridley can say what he wants, but I mean, it's just inaccurate to say that there's no exceptions. There have been, there will be. It's unpleasant in terms of what you guys want to do, but it's a fact. And look, maybe I'm being too honest, but I want you guys to help me on projects. I need you guys to help me on projects. And that means you got to tighten up projects. You got to work with developers. You got to give me a lot. And when you do that, I get a much better project and it's better for the whole area. But if you're asking for an absolute answer, that's just not, it's not a fair question.
Great. That leads me to my next question. The process of going through the Oak Lawn Committee and presenting specific documents to the community that aren't necessarily required by city staff to be presented as a project is being formulated and requesting upzoning. There is a process that is not codified at the City of Dallas, and that process has been in place since PD 193 was instated and the Oak Lawn Committee began their role as guardians of this plan, by which developers must present their plan to the Oak Lawn Committee, must present, as stated in the Oak Lawn Committee's agenda requirements, that landscape plans and elevations must be presented to the committee when requesting an upzone, and that those plans must be considered by the Oak Lawn Committee and neighborhood stakeholders before that project can then go to City Plan Commission. That is not required by city law. And any developer can decide that they don't want to follow that process and can simply follow city law with supposedly no consequences. What is your response to a developer who would like to simply follow city law and not follow the process set forth by the community of presenting the required documents to the Oak Lawn Committee and presenting their plan to the neighborhood stakeholders before proceeding to City Plan Commission and Council for a vote? Can we start with Councilman Blewett?
Yeah, that's a big question. And quite frankly, at my level, my role would be irresponsible to answer it in a way that would be satisfactory. I have a role, city staff has a role, CPC has a role, and you have a role. And if you're asking me to codify your role, it's not my place to do that. So I'm not going to do it.
All right, Mr.
You're
Ridley.
a private entity.
Thank you, Amanda. In that situation, and I recognize that it does exist, I don't have, as let me make that more general, a city council member may not have the direct authority to require a private developer to perform some act that is not required by ordinance. But what I would do in this situation is suggest to the applicant who comes to me and says he doesn't want to do the landscape plan or the elevations, that it might be in his interest to do that in order to obtain the support of the Oak Lawn Committee. And that there is a longstanding tradition with my record on the Plan Commission of not approving rezonings in PD 193 that failed to obtain the support of the Oak Lawn Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Ridley. Ms. Viney?
Yeah, yeah, I'll echo what's been said, as far as requiring a developer to do something outside of what is legally required. I mean, that's, I don't know that that's a city councilman's role. However, as I stated earlier, bringing various parties together early and often in these processes, I think then results in a better project, and project that has been the result of more collaboration. Now, as I'm learning more about the city and understanding more and speaking with people and neighborhood associations and residents, what I'm observing is that it seems that there seems to be a lack of trust from multiple parties. And forgive me if I read that inaccurately, but it seems as though, from the neighbor and the committee's perspective, there's a lack of trust that engagement with the developer will heed concerns. And on the developer side, it seems there's a lack of trust that residents will work with them. And what do we end up with? Well, situations where there's then is an end run around the collaboration, right? And so my encouragement would be in these situations and discussing with developers is that, listen, we've got to trust that the collaboration will be true and genuine from all parties. So let's get together and let's do that. Let's start these conversations, trust that we all have the best interests for our city and move forward from there. And it may seem like a Pollyanna approach, but I don't believe that it is. I believe that it is something we can come together and do. And then in instances like that where trust is created, and I think it takes give and take on both sides, right? I mean, we're all adults here. We understand that in negotiations, no one ever gets everything they want. And sometimes that means that the proper negotiation maybe was struck. So when there's give and take on both sides, I believe, yeah, it would be a give for developers to provide some of these things, which they're not legally necessarily required to do. But you know, let's all work to make it an environment where they would be willing to do so. And I, as a city council person, I would certainly encourage that.
Great, thank you. Shifting gears a little bit, I'd like to talk about how this case might impact the neighborhood in Oak Lawn, specifically how the Lincoln Katy Trail project might impact MF2 zoned land prices in Oak Lawn and other future development in Oak Lawn. Do you see a
Amanda,
relationship?
I'm gonna be rude for a sec. I'm gonna be rude for a second,
Go
but
right
I'm gonna
ahead.
give like a 5-minute notice. And so you
Sure
guys
thing.
keep doing what you gotta do, but I've tried to stick around as long as I can, but I'm kind of ignoring some other people. So I really gotta, I'll just say 5 minutes. If there's one other question, that's great. Otherwise, do what you gotta do.
Yeah, I guess the only other final question that I'd really like you to have a chance to answer would be, have you accepted any campaign contributions from anyone associated with Lincoln property? And if so, how much?
You know, that's a question that I actually have to think a little harder about because I have in the past. And so for me to be accurate, let me do some research first. But in reference to this case, I followed the ethics rules. I'm very comfortable that everybody is above board on this. I'm going to say no, but if you say anybody, so wait, how do you phrase that question?
Anyone associated with Lincoln properties?
My bet is that I have from some individuals, but I can't speak to it. So let me just have a little bit of an out, and I'm happy to come back. I'll do some research on it. But yeah, we've raised a bunch from a whole bunch of people, and I want to be careful because I don't want to get a gotcha.
We can give you guys an opportunity to check in with your treasurers and follow up on that question. Are there any last thoughts that you want to leave our audience with before you check out? I know you've got a packed schedule this evening. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, no, thank you for letting me have a little bit of a close. I'll just say, you know, I'll finish up where I started. That when I got into this job, I very much knew the role of the Oak Lawn Committee, the Oak Lawn Plan, PD 193. I know what you guys do. I know what you guys have done. And it's critically important now that I've been doing the job the last 2 years that I have a partner to work with on this, because I spend a lot of time on projects that are very complex. And if they're not buttoned up, it makes it a lot harder for me. So I need it at every level. I need projects to get better and better. And I think I've talked to Tony, maybe Amanda, maybe I talked to you a little bit, Hilda, other people. If a deal comes all the way to me and it hasn't been buttoned up, it makes my job much harder. CPC has a role to play, so does staff, so do you. And I very much need you guys. I've said it before, I'll say it again and again. Your district, PD 193, is very complex with a lot of challenges. You guys are the guardians of what the future of that area is going to be. And I expect you to play an important role. So I look forward to working with you going forward. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. I like to hear from Ms. Viney. I like to hear from Mr. Ridley, their thoughts on these things. It educates me in terms of where they are on it. It's helpful. So I appreciate hearing them. And I appreciate you guys putting this together. So with that, I think do I just say goodnight, Gracie, or what do I say?
Yes, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your
Amanda,
time
you're too
tonight.
young. You don't even know what goodnight, Gracie means.
I don't, but I can infer.
Say goodnight, Gracie. Good night. Anyway, thanks, guys.
So long, farewell. Da-na-na-na-na-na.
I'm going to send you an email. I'll bring you up to, I'm older than y'all, so I'll bring you up to speed. Actually, Tony knows what it is. Look at him. He's been around.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I honestly don't.
George Burns?
Before my time.
All right, well, we've got a
Gracie
couple more questions this evening, and I do want to open the floor for our other participants. Thank you guys for patiently waiting through all of these great questions. I see lots of comments in the comment box I haven't been looking through, but I've got one more hard-hitting
Amanda, before
question.
you do that, could we, Ms. Viney and I, respond to the last question you asked Mr. Blewett before we move on?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Let's keep that protocol, please.
All right, I'll go first. I can state categorically that I have never accepted any campaign contribution from anyone I knew to be associated with Lincoln Property Company, nor will I accept any contribution from them before the final determination of this important zoning case.
Thank you, Ms. Viney.
Yeah, hey, Elizabeth here. Yeah, I can say to my knowledge, no. We have been very grateful recently. Our campaign's been getting a lot of traction. We've been meeting so many neighbors. And so I've been getting a lot of, I see my Anadot notifications pop up, and, it'll be a neighbor that just, sent me $20. And so anyway, with that being said, if someone like that happens to be associated with Lincoln Properties, sure, I don't know. I have no idea, but to my knowledge, categorically no.
Thank you. Okay, last hard-hitting question of the night, and then we'll open the floor for comments and questions. What do you think will be the effect of the approval of the Lincoln Katy Trail project on MF2 zoned land prices in Oak Lawn and the future of development in Oak Lawn? Paul Ridley, would you like to go first on this one?
Sure. And much of my answer will be reiterating what Tony Page has already told us. He recounted that I predicted back in 2018, when I first opposed this project, what would happen, and that's proven to be true with the recent listing of the Nazarian property at $300 a square foot, and the potential rezonings of other property that's currently zoned MF2 but is up for sale that Tony identified in his presentation. And the importance of that is not just mere economics, it's the impact that it will have on the character of the area that we're talking about in the special purpose district. And that is that no longer will MF2 developments be economic. When the property flips to a new owner at $300 a square foot, as Tony indicated, the only type of development that can provide a profitable payback for the investors is a high-rise. MF3 zone with no limitation on height. And that is going to lead to a complete transformation of the character of Oak Lawn. The beautiful tree overhung streets and green space that will be leveled if this project gets built. That's the kind of visceral impact that this rezoning will have on what is one of the most pleasant neighborhoods in Dallas and has been for many years. So this is really a watershed event, and how it is decided at the City Council, principally upon Mr. Blewett's motion, will determine the future course and the beauty of Oak Lawn.
Thank you, Mrs. Viney.
Yep. And I recall the question. But thank you so much for repeating it every time. That's always good, especially with these very very specific questions. So I think the dangerous thing is that it starts to set a new precedent, right? We've had a precedent so long of working with the Oak Lawn Committee, and now this is starting to set a new precedent. I think and then B, you asked specifically about land prices. Yeah, I think what was said is correct. What Mr. Page referred to, that other properties are going up for sale now at price points that are indicating non-MF2 zoned price points. That means that a hat is being tipped to what is going on down the road. And it also has an impact on the environment of Oak Lawn. Oak Lawn is as I alluded to earlier, such a desirable place to live because the way it is developed. And I don't want to see that taken away. And then finally, the disturbing precedent about what has happened with the Lincoln Katy Trail is the lack of agreement, the lack of collaboration that has happened. And I want to see that change. I want to see that go back to where the developer wants to engage the local community stakeholders and the Oak Lawn Committee, because the developers see the value that this neighborhood association, that the Oaklawn Committee brings. And like I said, I think that'll take both parties coming back together, working together, and other developers down the road. Because I think it is true, these types of developments will continue coming. And it takes both parties wanting to engage, because I think engaging will be mutually beneficial.
Thank you, guys. Any parting thoughts as we wrap up this conversation this evening? Elizabeth Viney, please go first.
Sure. So are these our closing comments for the evening? Are we going to answer more questions?
Please. Yeah,
Okay.
I do want to formally wrap things up and give folks an opportunity to drop off if they would like to, and then we can continue the conversation with more comments and open the floor.
Got it. Lovely. All right. Yeah. Y'all, I am running for city council because I genuinely I love our city. I love our community. I was kind of reading some of the comments as they were popping up, the first 2 or 3 words of them. And I noticed one comment said, hey, all 3 candidates live in East Dallas. And that one struck me because I started investing and loving and serving our city because I was serving our city all over Dallas, from far west Dallas, over on the other side of the Trinity River to South Oak Cliff to East Dallas to Uptown area. And a rising tide raises all ships. And I want to be a representative for everyone in our district, for every neighborhood. This will be, outside of raising my children, this will be my job. And I love learning more from neighborhood associations such as you. You know the best what's going on in your backyard. And you do make a council person's job better, make a council person better able to do their job by lending your expertise, your experiences, your thoughts, and your advice. So I'm excited to do that. I didn't wake up yesterday wanting to serve my city. It's something I've been doing for a very long time. And so I think as we end, like, I want you to hear my heart and hear my heart for our city, and feel that you are in competent hands. I'm someone who will get up to speed on things very quickly. I learn things quickly. I understand things quickly. And I think a fresh new set of eyes on a lot of these cases and a lot of these issues would be a welcome change. There have been hiccups that have been happening. Lincoln Katy Trail is an example of one of those. And what a wise person told me is that, hey, if you like what you got, keep doing what you're doing. But if you're dissatisfied with how things are going, let's try something different. And I'm someone offering that. And I'd love for you all to consider giving me your vote in that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Ridley, parting thoughts for this evening.
Thank you, Amanda. At the beginning of our meeting here tonight, I told you that I stood for neighborhoods, for protecting and preserving our neighborhoods principally, and our neighborhood parks were 2 of my principal issues. This case pertains to the first and foremost of protecting our neighborhoods. We are on the precipice of a slippery slope with this case. If it is approved at City Council, it will break the precedent of respecting the Oaklawn plan. It will constitute not an exception to the plan, but a violation of the plan. It will also break the precedent of respect of city officials for the Oaklawn Committee. This is not just a one-off instance that has no historical significance. And I disagree with Ms. Viney that we need a fresh look at things. What we need is institutional memory. People who remember traditions from 20 years ago, even though I may not have been around 20 years ago, I have studied the history of Oaklawn. I've spoken with people, many on the Oaklawn Committee, who were around then, who were around 30 years ago. And so I have that historical perspective that is so important to preserving the sanctity of a plan like the Oaklawn plan and preserving the authority and the relevance of the Oaklawn Committee. Now, you've heard other candidates talk about the Oakland Plan and making exceptions to it. And I will submit to you that no one on this call has displayed a greater support for the Oakland Plan and the Oakland Committee, not just in the words that we've spoken here tonight, but in actions, my actions over the last 8 years that I served on the Plan Commission, which without exception supported the relevancy of the Oakland Plan and the Oakland Committee. And so if what you are looking for is a candidate who can stand with your neighborhood, preserve the Oakland Plan, preserve the low-rise MF2 affordable housing in your neighborhood and its current ambiance as a wonderful neighborhood, then I would be very pleased to receive your vote in the upcoming election.
Thank you guys for those parting words. And before I open up the floor, I just want to remind you guys to email David Blewett, submit your grievances or support of the Lincoln Katy Trail plan, check out their website. They have not followed due process and have not been consistent with the plan. Please follow up with the candidates, continue to ask hard questions, stay engaged, donate money to their campaigns, and encourage your neighbors to vote. Thanks so much for everyone being here tonight. If you have comments for the candidates or questions you'd like to throw out, please feel free to unmute yourself, and we'll be somewhat orderly for another few minutes here while we stay here and chat together. Thanks so much, everyone. This has been a fantastic conversation. I'm surprised we still have so many folks still on the line. I think we had a good 105 or so attendees tonight, and we've still got 65 folks interested in continuing the conversation. Thank you all. This has been a really great conversation. I'm so glad we had this second follow-up event.
I have a question. I live on Turtle Creek at 21 Turtle Creek. There is a continuing pattern on Turtle Creek, particularly I notice it between Lemon and Avondale, of people going much faster than is safe for the conditions. You know, I'm sure some are exceeding the 30 miles per hour. We've even had some street racing, a little bit of that here. But my concern is there a possibility of making that a 25 mile per hour zone on some parts of Turtle Creek and or putting speed bumps in? We've had at least 2 fatalities on that street within the last, I've lived here forever. It's probably 10 or 15 years. The more recent one was a pedestrian, a woman out walking with other people, and a man lost control of his car and killed her. So something, in my opinion, something needs to be looked at.
Would anyone like to address that? Mr. Ridley or Ms. Viney?
Well, that is obviously an important issue to the questioner, and I too am concerned generally about street racing and reckless driving in our city that we've seen so many instances of during the pandemic. That doesn't pertain to zoning, of course, or to this particular zoning project, but it is a concern, and that is something that I think should be addressed to the Dallas Police Department, particularly the Traffic Enforcement Division, which has been underfunded for several years now and undermanned. And that's why there probably are speeders there that should be but are not being apprehended. Better traffic enforcement will lead to better observance of the speed limit.
Yeah, you know, I heard about that those issues that have been happening in the area, and listen, public safety is my #1 issue that I'm running on. You know, public safety is important for all of us that live, work, and play throughout Dallas, and especially in the Uptown and Oakland area. Yeah, there are a lot of instances where pedestrians are walking very close to traffic, and our officers need to be better funded in order to better address those instances, better to address speed violations, And then to answer your question about speed bumps, I think that, and speed limit in particular, I think that's something that will have to be studied and looked into, but also increasing streetlights where it's appropriate to increase streetlights, increasing connectedness of sidewalks where it's appropriate to do that. There's a plan for that, and continuing to follow up with it. But to prevent people from speeding in the area, yeah, I think it's an increased presence and increased enforcement of speeding violations and traffic violations, from an increase in officers. We're 500 to 1,000 officers short in our Dallas Police Department. And Mr. Blewett did take 25% out of our officers' overtime budget. So regardless of how he tries to spin that is what happened. And we will continue to see the effects of that, from everything from murders and violent crime and all the way down to traffic violations, which are very dangerous as well.
Fantastic. Other questions for the candidates while they're here?
Are we doing an open mic yet, or?
Yes.
Can I add some thoughts?
Absolutely. Please go right ahead, Mr. Harrison.
Okay. Hi, I wanted to introduce myself because I live at Turtle Creek Terrace condominiums. We've been here since 2007, and we bought just right after the property on the other side of Hall was voted down as the way that they voted was that it couldn't come back to the city council for a while. And we bought this property because it's a great investment. I welcome anybody to go to Google Maps, and you will see there's so much common space here because of the way that it was built back in the old days, that about 40% of our property is really common space. So the value of this property is really enhanced by that. The whole situation here with Lincoln Katy Trail and what they're doing with the contract that they brought forth to our HOA is essentially putting me and other homeowners that don't want to leave against the city. Now, the city requires that 100% of the people agree for a zoning application, but the city has determined that that's not relevant in that situation. So this is the second time that we've had to go through this, and it's enormous drain on our time. And it's binary. It's binary in the sense that if this gets voted through, then automatically the condominium association becomes terminated. And when that happens, we essentially will become squatters. I mean, this is my attorney's words, not mine. So you have no rights to live here when that happens, the way that this contract is set up. So on the very far end of the continuum, and this is my lawyer's words, I mean, the sheriff can come in and forcibly remove you from the property. Own this property since 2007. I'm current on all of my taxes. I'm current on all of my HOA, everything. But this is a situation where they changed the declarations. It was 100% unanimous consent. They changed it to where it's now 80%. And there's other people here that are in that 20% that don't want to leave. And some of them really enhance the community, not only here at Turtle Creek, but also the area. And one of them has challenges with vision, and it'll be very significant change in her life.
Thank you, David. I know.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate you being here. It's good to know that there are people who live there who aren't necessarily excited about selling to Lincoln Properties. We've got time for one more question. Robin, I know we're at the 2-hour mark here, but you've had your hand up for a moment.
Thank you, Amanda. I appreciate you calling on me. I live in the Plaza at Turtle Creek 2. will and I'm only on the 4th floor, so I'm not one of those people who has the amazing views of all of downtown and all of that stuff. I moved here because it wasn't uptown. I wanted an urban environment that was not uptown. And while I continue here at the Oak Lawn Committee, maybe the guardian of the Oak Lawn Plan, the recent Toll Brothers project at Welborn and Congress, despite its initial rejection by the Oak Lawn Committee, eventually was supported by the committee and frankly crammed down on a neighborhood that was majority and vocally not in favor of the project. My question is, at what point does the Planning Commission and the City Council also have responsibility to listen to owners and neighbors regarding the impact of a project on the character and efficiency, like traffic, setbacks, et cetera, that may overrule the Oak Lawn Committee's eventual decision? That decision, the planners and the zoning consultant and the developer were frankly ridiculously condescending and gave us a Sophie's choice of, well, I can do this by right and make it this, or I can make it this and it will be a little bit better. So there really wasn't a good choice there. So I want to hear from the candidates, you know, where is that line? Where do you take responsibility as a city council person to say, you know, this is really impacting the character of the neighborhood, and I blame a lot of what happened with that particular project on Philip Kingston, but that is a continuing concern for these kinds of projects that impact the neighborhood.
Thank you, Robin. That's a tough question because that was a huge, that project unpacks a lot. Ms. Viney, would you like to address that quickly? We might have a whole nother meeting on that one and other projects in the neighborhood equally as contained.
Yeah, you know, yeah, that's a hugely important question, but I'm just going to harken back to what Mr. Brown said earlier, when that there are 4 different bodies that should come in, right? It's the developer, it's the commissioner and the staff at City Hall, it's the Oak Lawn Committee, but it is also the neighborhoods and the local neighborhoods and the residents there. And so they are part of the foundational piece of these discussions. So, you know, I'll harken back to what he said, in that the integrity of the public hearing process relies on bringing in input from all of these people, and that does include the residents as separate from the Oak Lawn Committee as well.
Mr. Ridley.
Robin, I'm very familiar with the project, the Toll Brothers project at Congress in Welborn. It is the unfortunate result of pre-existing MF3 zoning. You heard Tony Page talk about the differences between MF2 zoning, where the Katy Trail project is currently zoned, and MF3, which is what basically the developer is requesting, and how that would really change the nature of this area of Oak Lawn. Well, unfortunately, there was nothing we could do about the pre-existing zoning, except that there was one thing which I initiated, which was an authorized hearing. What that means is I get 2 other members of the Plan Commission to sign a memo to the staff that requests that the city initiate an authorized hearing, which means that we can look at rezoning an area that includes many different ownerships from one category to another category. In this case, it was to change it from MF3 to MF2 so that that kind of a project couldn't be built. And we went down that road. I got the signatures of 2 other plan commissioners. The Plan Commission authorized the initial formation of that study area. The staff started looking at it, and they formulated, on my recommendation of some members, a task force of residents of the area to meet and consider changing the overall zoning in the area around the Toll Brothers project. Unfortunately, after the change of councilman to Mr. Blewett, that initiative fell apart. It never went anywhere because he apparently didn't support it. So
Agreed.
I'm sorry that that building is being built there. It's was done by right. because they had the MF3 zoning there. And I agree, it was not an appropriate location for that kind of density. The streets are too narrow. The surrounding area of adjacent properties is all low rise. And it's just an unfortunate vestige of zoning that was done 40 or 50 years ago.
Thank you all for sticking around with us for over 2 hours to have these important conversations. Thank you to the candidates and to Mr. Blewett for answering all of these tough questions. We look forward to more conversations with you guys in the upcoming weeks, and we will all be getting our neighbors to go out and vote. We're looking forward to May 1st and the future of this great neighborhood. Thank you all. Have a great evening. So lovely to have you all here tonight. Good night.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thanks for having us, guys.
Thank you.